let's get right into it. Number 7, you actually pause before reacting. Picture this. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of immediately honoring their entire family tree with creative insults, you take a breath and think, maybe they're having a day. Congratulations, you just did something most people's brains actively fight against. Your amygdala, that's the almond-shaped drama queen in your brain, wants you to go full caveman mode immediately. Fight or flight, baby. No thinking required. But emotionally intelligent people have trained their prefrontal cortex to be the bouncer at the club, stepping in like, hold up, let's think about this for literally 3 seconds before we ruin our entire afternoon. It's called emotional regulation, and it's basically the difference between being a functioning adult and being a YouTube comment section come to life. Here's what's happening. You're creating this tiny gap between stimulus and response. Viktor Frankl would be proud. Your brain is physically routing the emotional impulse through your frontal lobe instead of letting your lizard brain run the show. It's like having a really good spam filter for your feelings. The science is wild too. Studies show that people who can delay their emotional reactions have better relationships, less stress, and probably aren't banned from as many family dinners. They're not suppressing their feelings, they're just not letting their feelings drive the car while drunk. So if you can feel the anger rising and still manage to not send that text message you'll regret in 6 minutes, you're basically a psychological superhero. Your impulse control is doing the Lord's work. Number 6, other people's emotions don't scare you. Most people treat emotions like they're radioactive. Someone starts crying, time to panic and ask if they want water 17 times. Someone's angry, better tiptoe around them like they're a sleeping dragon. But you can sit in a room with someone who's falling apart and not immediately need to fix it, run away, or make it about yourself. This is called emotional tolerance, and it's rarer than you'd think. See, when someone around you is experiencing big feelings, your mirror neurons start firing. Your brain literally starts mimicking their emotional state. It's like emotional secondhand smoke. Most people can't handle that, so either they shut down, get defensive, or try to make the other person stop feeling things as quickly as possible. But emotionally intelligent people have figured out that emotions aren't emergencies, they're just information. You can acknowledge someone's pain without absorbing it like an emotional sponge. You can validate feelings without becoming responsible for them. Revolutionary concept, I know. There's actual research backing this up. People with high emotional intelligence show different brain activity in their anterior cingulate cortex when exposed to others' distress. They're processing it, not drowning in it. They can separate "you're having a hard time" from "I need to have a hard time with you to prove I care." It's the difference between empathy and emotional contagion. One is helpful, the other is just everyone being a mess together and calling it support.
Number 5. You know what you're actually feeling. This sounds stupidly simple, but most people are emotionally illiterate. Ask them how they're feeling, and they'll say fine or stressed, like those are the only 2 settings. But you've got the entire Crayola box of emotional vocabulary. You can tell the difference between anxious and overwhelmed, between disappointed and hurt, between frustrated and angry. Your brain is basically running with subtitles turned on. Neuroscience calls this emotional granularity, and it's like having high-definition feelings instead of fuzzy analog static. When you can label an emotion precisely, your brain actually calms down. It's called affect labeling, and fMRI studies show it reduces activity in your amygdala, the panic button of your brain. Here's why this matters. If you think you're just upset, your brain treats it like this vague, unmanageable blob of bad. But if you can identify, I'm feeling underappreciated because my efforts went unnoticed, which triggered some old stuff about not being seen, well, now you've got something to work with. You've turned emotional chaos into useful data. Most people are walking around with the emotional awareness of a potato. They feel bad, they react, they wonder why their life is a mess, but you are out here doing emotional forensics, figuring out exactly which flavor of uncomfortable you're experiencing and why. It's like the difference between your check engine light coming on and actually knowing it's the oxygen sensor. One is just scary and vague. The other gives you something to fix. Number 4. You apologize like an adult. When you mess up, you don't do that weak, sorry you felt that way garbage or that deflecting, I'm sorry but nonsense. You offer an actual grown-up apology that acknowledges what you did, takes responsibility, and doesn't make the other person comfort you about it. Apparently, this is extremely difficult for most humans. The emotionally intelligent apology looks like this. I'm sorry, but you have to understand I was stressed and you were being annoying, and really we both made mistakes here. Congratulations, you just made your apology into a counterattack. Your ego is working overtime to protect you from the devastating experience of being wrong. But emotionally intelligent people have figured out that being wrong doesn't threaten their entire identity. They can say, I messed up, that was hurtful, I'm sorry, without their sense of self crumbling into dust. Their prefrontal cortex has convinced their amygdala that admitting fault is not the same as admitting you're garbage as a human. Research in conflict resolution shows that genuine apologies, the kind that actually acknowledge harm without qualification, are one of the biggest predictors of relationship satisfaction and repair. They're also incredibly rare because everyone's walking around with their defense mechanisms on autopilot. Here's the thing, a real apology requires emotional intelligence on multiple levels. You need to understand how your actions affected someone else. You need to manage your own shame and defensiveness. You need to prioritize the relationship over your ego. That's like emotional intelligence Olympics right there. Most people would rather die than say, I was wrong and I hurt you and I'm sorry. But you can take the L with grace. Number 3, you're comfortable with uncertainty. Life is fundamentally uncertain, and most people are losing their minds about it. They need to know exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and what happens next, or they short circuit. But you can sit in the ambiguity without having an existential crisis every 45 minutes. Your brain hates uncertainty, like really hates it. The anterior cingulate cortex lights up with uncertainty the same way it does with physical pain. Your brain would literally rather receive a guaranteed electric shock now than maybe receive one later. That's how much it despises not knowing. But emotionally intelligent people have made peace with the fact that most of life is just improvisation with varying levels of anxiety. They can tolerate the discomfort of, I don't know what's going to happen, without spiraling into catastrophic thinking or trying to control everything within a 10-mile radius. This is called distress tolerance, and it's basically emotional flexibility. You're not rigid. You're not clinging to the illusion of control. You can adapt. Studies show that people who can handle ambiguity have lower anxiety, better problem-solving skills, and don't drive everyone around them crazy with their need for constant reassurance. Meanwhile, people with low emotional intelligence are out here trying to micromanage the entire universe because the alternative, accepting that they can't predict or control everything, is too terrifying. They'd rather exhaust themselves trying to eliminate all uncertainty than just exist with it. You're basically doing exposure therapy on your need for certainty every single day. Your brain has learned that I don't know is not a catastrophe. It's just reality. Number 2, you can handle criticism without imploding. Someone gives you feedback, and instead of immediately defending yourself, explaining why they're wrong, or crying in a bathroom, you actually listen. You can separate this thing you did was problematic from you are fundamentally worthless as a human being. This is shockingly advanced. Most people's egos are made of tissue paper and one strong criticism away from total collapse. Their self-worth is so fragile that any negative feedback feels like a personal attack on their soul. So they get defensive, aggressive, or they shut down completely. Their nervous system interprets criticism as a threat, and suddenly they're in fight or flight mode over a performance review. But you've somehow convinced your brain that feedback is just information, not an assassination attempt.
You can hear, "This could be better," without hearing, "You're terrible and everyone knows it." Your sense of self isn't dependent on being perfect or right all the time. There's actual neurological stuff happening here. Emotionally intelligent people show less activity in their threat detection systems when receiving criticism. Their prefrontal cortex is going, "Okay, let's process this rationally," while everyone else's amygdala is screaming, "We're under attack!" It's called having a growth mindset, and it requires genuinely believing that you're not a fixed entity who must be defended at all costs. You're a work in progress. You can be wrong today and different tomorrow. You can mess up without it meaning something catastrophic about your worth. Most people can't do this. They're too busy protecting their ego to actually learn anything. But you're out here collecting criticism like feedback is just free coaching. Number 1. You understand that your feelings aren't facts. Here's the big one. You can feel something intensely and still recognize it's not necessarily true. You can feel like everyone hates you and simultaneously know that's probably your anxiety lying. You can feel like giving up and still understand that's just temporary emotional weather, not an accurate assessment of reality. This is metacognition applied to emotions, and it's basically the final boss of emotional intelligence. Most people are completely fused with their feelings. If they feel it, it must be true. They feel rejected, so they are rejected. They feel worthless, so they are worthless. There's no daylight between the emotion and reality. But you've created this tiny bit of space, this observer perspective, where you can notice your feelings without being completely hijacked by them. Psychologists call this decentering or cognitive diffusion. Your brain has learned that emotions are experiences, not facts. They're data points, not destinations. The science here is wild. This ability to observe your thoughts and feelings without being consumed by them is associated with better mental health outcomes across basically every category. Depression, anxiety, stress, all improved when people can create distance between themselves and their emotional experiences. It's like you're running dual operating systems. One part of you is feeling all the feelings, the other part is calmly taking notes like, "Interesting, we're feeling abandoned right now, even though objectively no one has abandoned us. Probably worth examining that." You're simultaneously in the experience and observing it. Most people can't do this. Their feelings are reality. They're completely identified with every emotional state. So when they feel hopeless, they are hopeless. When they feel anxious, the danger must be real. They're drowning in their own emotional weather and insisting it's the truth about the universe. But you figured out that feelings are just visitors. They show up, they tell you things, some of it's useful and some of it's complete nonsense, and then they leave. You don't have to believe everything you feel. Basically, you've achieved what most people spend years in therapy trying to learn. Your emotions aren't the boss of you. They're just emotions. That's all for today. I'll be making more videos like this, so subscribe if you don't want to miss them.